You remember the moment the world shifted, the exact second their lies cut deeper than any blade. A quiet betrayal, a soft stab, a wound that didn't bleed on the outside, but flooded your entire soul in silence. They thought you wouldn't notice. They thought you wouldn't react. They thought you would stay exactly where they placed you. Obedient, polite, predictable. People like them always think the quiet ones stay quiet forever. They expected you to break softly, to fold gently, to disappear without a sound. They built the trap with confidence, convinced the old version of you would beg for mercy before daring to fight. But they didn't understand something crucial. Even the calmest ocean hides a monster beneath it. And they woke it up, because at that edge, at that final breaking point where most people collapse, something ancient stirred under your ribs, something fierce, something forgotten, a storm you didn't know was yours, a creature forged before you even understood pain. It stretched, it roared, it clawed at the walls of your chest, demanding rebirth. You weren't destroyed. You were awakened. That's the part they never saw coming. Betrayal is strange. It feels like silence hitting you at full speed. You freeze. You pause. You question everything. Why them? Why now? What did you do to deserve this? But the truth is simple. You didn't deserve it. They feared who you were becoming, so they tried to kill the version of you that was still growing. But all they did was speed up your evolution. Because when the lies shattered against your chest, your scars began whispering truths you ignored for years. Truths you buried. Truths you avoided. Truths that finally screamed loud enough to drown everything else. You didn't become cold. You became accurate. You started seeing people as they are, not as you wished they were. Every mask, every motive, every double meaning in their words. You saw straight through it all. And suddenly the world wasn't blurry anymore. It was sharp. It was precise. It was honest in its cruelty. Every fake smile they offered you, fuel. Every hidden dagger slipped behind your back, fuel. Every whispered insult, every dismissive look, every moment they underestimated you, fuel. Fuel for a fire that had been waiting years to ignite. You learned the oldest rule of fallen kings, a rule written in the ashes of every empire that ever burned. When you lose everything, you gain clarity. And clarity is dangerous. Clarity is a weapon sharper than revenge. Clarity makes you see what must end, what must be cut off, what must be buried. Clarity removes the softness from your decisions, the hesitation from your steps, the mercy from your boundaries. Suddenly you stopped chasing, stopped explaining, stopped bending, stopped allowing disrespect to dress itself as loyalty. You stopped giving people discounts to stay in your life. That's when the fear began shifting, because shadows, the same shadows that once terrified you, became your teachers. They showed you how darkness isn't an enemy. It is a forge, a place where broken metal becomes pure steel, a place where shattered souls become kingdoms, and silence, the same silence that used to suffocate you, became your armor. You learned that silence is not emptiness. It's control. It's strategy. It's dominance without noise. Silence taught you to step back and watch people reveal themselves without your help. Silence taught you that your energy is a throne, and not everyone deserves to sit beside it. Silence taught you that the most powerful moves are made without announcements. And that was the day everything changed. The day the fracture became a doorway. The day pain became your blueprint. The day betrayal stopped being your weakness and became your evolution. That was the day they stopped hurting you and started forging you. Because the version of you they attacked was never meant to survive. It was meant to break. It was meant to fall apart, so the real version of you could walk out of the fire untouched. They thought they were ending you. They were sculpting you. They thought they were defeating you. They were arming you. They thought they were burying you. They were planting you in soil that only the strongest survive. This is the truth they can never erase. You didn't rise despite them. You rose because of them. And the creature they awakened, the one forged from silence, storms and scars, is not here to break, not here to beg, not here to bow. You are here to become everything they swore you could never be. You are here to evolve past their reach. You are here to make your return feel like justice crafted in fire. This was the first fracture, the crack that didn't ruin you, the crack that revealed you. The creature is awake now, and you will never go back. You stopped explaining yourself, and suddenly the world lost control over you. Just like that. One decision, one shift, one moment where your voice no longer existed for their validation, and everything changed. Because silence is not weakness. Silence is strategy. Silence is the art of starving the world of access to your mind. And the moment you embraced it, your entire evolution began. Silence sharpened your senses. Stillness rebuilt your bones. You began noticing what you never saw before. The way people used noise to hide their emptiness. The way they needed attention to feel alive. The way chaos was their only language. You became different. You became still. And stillness is terrifying for those who fear their own reflection. When you became quiet, you started hearing things clearly. Your instincts grew sharper. Your awareness expanded. You noticed lies before they were spoken, intentions before they were acted, betrayal before it even moved. Predators don't roar, they wait, they stalk, they measure, they calculate, and then, only when the moment is perfect, they strike with precision. You learned that truth the hard way. The world mistook your calm for defeat. They thought your silence meant surrender. They believed your stillness was the end of your fight. But your silence was the blueprint of your evolution. Because every minute you spent alone became a laboratory of reinvention. You studied yourself. You studied your patterns. You studied the way you loved, the way you trusted, the way you tolerated disrespect under the name of loyalty. And slowly, painfully, beautifully, you rewired everything. You realigned your values. You redesigned your boundaries. You restructured the way your heart beats and your mind breathes. You didn't harden. You refined. And refinement is far more dangerous than rage. People understand anger. They expect explosions. They know how to dodge a storm. But they don't know what to do when the storm becomes intelligent, precise, silent. You became that silent storm. You stopped reacting to what wasn't worthy of your energy. You stopped explaining your scars to people who caused them. You stopped chasing closure from people who celebrated your confusion. And in the vacuum left behind by your silence, your power began expanding, slowly at first, then violently, then undeniably. Let them misread you. Let them underestimate you. It only feeds the transformation. Your enemies did half the work for you by assuming you were finished, because nothing grows like a person who isolates with purpose. Nothing evolves like a soul that folds into its own fire. Nothing becomes more lethal than someone who rebuilds themselves in the dark. Your mind became colder, not with cruelty, but with clarity. Cleaner, not with pride, but with truth. More dangerous, not with hatred, but with understanding. You learned that the loudest room is the one where you say nothing. You learned that the most powerful retaliation is a life rebuilt in silence. You learned that disappearing temporarily is how warriors sharpen their swords. You started speaking differently, not with words, but with actions, with presence, with results, with the kind of return that makes people regret every moment they doubted you. Ancient conquerors knew this truth, the truth carved into the bones of every warrior who ever rose from ruin. A warrior doesn't train for applause. A warrior trains for inevitability. That's what you became. Inevitable. Not because you were given power, but because you built it quietly, brick by brick, scar by scar, night by night, alone, focused, unnoticed. You became the version of yourself that can no longer be manipulated, no longer be deceived, no longer be controlled. Silence turned into discipline. Discipline turned into transformation. Transformation turned into dominance. You slowly became the type of presence that enters a room and changes the temperature. The type of spirit that makes noise without speaking. The type of force that people feel before they see. And that's when the panic begins. When the same people who laughed at your silence realize your quiet was never surrender. It was preparation. They prayed for your downfall. But in that quiet, you evolved into the storm they prayed you'd never become. Because storms don't announce themselves. Storms don't seek permission. Storms don't care who doubts their arrival. They arrive. They transform everything in their path. And they leave the world different than before. That's you now. Unpredictable, unreachable, untouchable. Your silence took everything they thought made you weak and turned it into precision, into power, into inevitability. And now, they don't fear your noise. They fear your silence, because silence is the final warning. The calm before invasion, the breath before dominance, the evolution before the world realizes it's too late. This was your metamorphosis. Quiet, cold, calculated, complete. And now the storm wakes. You reached a point where survival was no longer enough. Silence was no longer enough. Healing was no longer enough. There comes a moment in every warrior's evolution where the pain stops being a wound and becomes a weapon. This was that moment for you. You learned to turn wounds into blades. You learned to turn scars into strategy. You learned to turn every piece they shattered into sharp edges you could finally cut your future with. Every betrayal, a knife you reforged. Every rejection, a lesson you mastered. Every humiliation, a blueprint you studied. And suddenly the broken pieces stopped hurting you. They started protecting you. They started guiding you. They started arming you. Because the truth no one admits is simple. Pain builds better warriors than comfort ever will. For the first time, You didn't run from the shadows. You recruited them. You didn't run from your scars. You sharpened them. You didn't run from the darkness. You crowned yourself with it. You stopped chasing people and started chasing purpose. Stopped begging for loyalty and started demanding alignment. Stopped asking what someone meant and started watching what they did. Your vision sharpened. Your instincts strengthened. Your patience thickened. And the world didn't notice until it was too late. Because when you stop needing anything from anyone, you become dangerous. Truly, quietly, undeniably dangerous. People fear the one who needs nothing. People panic when the person they underestimated starts moving with discipline and hunger. People lose control when the old version of you, the one they could manipulate, is dead and buried. And that's exactly what happened. You became a hunter, not of people, of purpose, of power, of mastery, of evolution. You started chasing the life you deserved, not the one you were tolerated in. You started valuing your time like a throne, your energy like gold, your presence like a blade, your loneliness transformed into focus, your heartbreak transformed into hunger, your silence transformed into a weapon no one could deflect. And every time you leveled up, someone who once controlled you lost their power. They pushed you into the dark, never realizing you'd return wearing the dark as armor. They wanted you weak, but built a warrior instead. They wanted you lost, but mapped your rebirth. They wanted you dependent, but forged your independence. You became everything they feared, everything they tried to prevent, everything they whispered about in circles of insecurity. Because once the hunt begins, once the fire in your chest stops being pain and becomes purpose, nothing can restrain you. Nothing. The same people who broke you thought the story ended there. They thought you would stay shattered, stay wounded, stay down. But that's the mistake of the unscarred. They don't understand that some souls grow sharper every time they're cut. They don't understand that some hearts grow colder every time they're abandoned. They don't understand that some minds grow clearer every time they're betrayed. You are one of those souls, one of those hearts, one of those minds. You rose like a fallen empire rediscovering its throne. Not loud, not dramatic, just inevitable. Your return wasn't a battle cry. It was a warning shot. Your eyes no longer carried a softness. Your voice no longer bent under pressure. Your steps no longer hesitated in the presence of doubt. And everyone felt it, even the ones who pretended not to notice. Especially them. Your rise exposed them. Your discipline insulted their laziness. Your confidence threatened their illusions. Your silence destroyed their narratives. And the moment you stepped back into the world with a new spine, a new fire, a new coldness to your soul, they finally saw the truth they spent years avoiding. You didn't survive their betrayal. You evolved because of it. You became something new, something stronger, something they never deserved access to. You became the lesson they never wanted to learn. And as your steps grew heavier with purpose, as your presence grew sharper with precision, as your spirit grew darker with wisdom, something else happened. The world stopped looking at you as someone who was broken and started seeing you as someone who could not be broken again. That is the moment the hunt truly begins. When the world goes quiet, when the noise fades, when every distraction dies, when the only thing left standing is your will. Cold, disciplined, unshakable. The hunt begins when you stop seeking permission, when you stop explaining your ambition, when you stop accepting less than what your scars paid for. The hunt begins when your past stops defining you and starts fueling you, when your future stops intimidating you and starts calling you by name. And the hunt becomes unstoppable when you realize something terrifying. You didn't rise to prove them wrong. You rose because you finally understood what you were capable of. They didn't create your power. They released it. They didn't destroy your path. They cleared it. They didn't ruin your life. They rewired it. Every loss built foundation. Every scar built structure. Every betrayal built armor. Every silence built discipline. Your evolution wasn't an accident. It was a consequence. And now, with every piece of your past sharpened into a blade, with every part of your old self burned into fuel, with every broken fragment reforged into steel, you step forward, not as the victim, not as the survivor, but as the force they will never outrun. Because once the hunt begins, there is no turning back. Only forward, only fire, only destiny. There always comes a moment when the balance shifts. A moment when the hunted becomes the hunter. A moment when the silent one stops waiting and starts walking forward. For you, that moment arrived quietly. No announcement, no explosion, no dramatic declaration, just presence, just focus, just power. Then came the day you walked back into the world with a spine made of storms and eyes that carried the cold mathematics of someone who had studied betrayal and learned its language fluently. And that's when they saw you. Really saw you. Not the version they controlled. Not the version they manipulated. Not the version they dismissed. They saw the version they created. The one born from their lies, their cruelty, their underestimation, the version they were never prepared to face. Then came the shift, the reversal, the moment they finally understood that the thing they feared was no longer a possibility. It was standing in front of them. You didn't speak, you didn't threaten, you didn't need to, because your presence was the threat. Your silence carried weight. Your steps carried authority. Your eyes carried calculation. And suddenly, the same people who once laughed at you couldn't look you in the eyes anymore. Their voices softened. Their confidence evaporated. Their arrogance dissolved. Because nothing haunts the guilty like the return of the one they tried to destroy. They looked at you and realized the softness they once used as a weapon was gone, burned, evaporated, replaced by something harder than steel and colder than truth. They looked at you and saw a creature shaped from storms, forged from silence, rebuilt from broken pieces they assumed you would never recover. They looked at you and felt fear. Not of what you would do to them, but of what you had become because of them. That is the deepest punishment. Not revenge, but realization. You didn't strike back. You didn't beg for apologies. You didn't demand fairness. You evolved. And nothing terrifies the guilty more than evolution they didn't intend. You rose beyond their reach, beyond their manipulation, beyond their calculations, and they realized too late that the old version of you, the one they disrespected, and underestimated was dead. Not gone. Dead. Buried. Erased. And something new stood in its place. Something they couldn't humiliate. Something they couldn't deceive. Something they couldn't control. It wasn't revenge. It was realignment. You didn't come back to destroy them. You came back to outgrow them. And that hurt them far more. Because when you outgrow someone, you force them to see themselves without the comfort of your silence. Your growth exposed their immaturity. Your confidence exposed their insecurity. Your stability exposed their chaos. Your evolution exposed their stagnation. You became the mirror they wished they never had to look into. And as you rose higher, their fears rose with you. They whispered your name differently, not with disrespect, but with caution, because your success became their consequence. Your discipline became their reminder. Your presence became their punishment. This is the truth. When you heal, they feel it. When you rise, they feel it. When you evolve, they feel it. When you step into your power, every person who tried to break you feels the ground shifting beneath their feet. Your evolution wasn't quiet for them. It was loud. It was violent. It was unavoidable. Because your return carried something their souls were never ready to confront. The evidence of their failure. They didn't defeat you. They upgraded you. They didn't bury you. They planted you. They didn't silence you. They sharpened you. And that realization broke them more than anything you could have said. You became the consequence of their actions. You became the answer to their betrayal. You became the embodiment of every lesson they forced you to learn. Your new self wasn't built from love or support or encouragement. It was built from fire, from disappointment, from abandonment, from disrespect, and nothing built from fire returns gentle. Your presence alone became a battlefield, a reminder, a warning. People stepped back when you stepped in, not because you were aggressive, but because you were undeniable. You no longer asked for respect. You radiated it. You no longer sought attention. Attention found you. You no longer needed validation. You became your own proof, and the world adjusted. Because that's what the world does when it can no longer belittle you. It adjusts. The same mouths that spit venom now stayed quiet. The same eyes that ignored your worth now watched closely. The same hands that pushed you down now trembled at the thought of who you had become. This is the price they pay for creating a monster they never planned on meeting. Not a monster of cruelty, a monster of truth, a monster of clarity, a monster of discipline, a monster of silent power. You didn't become evil. You became inevitable. And that is the moment the world finally understood. You are not rising to seek revenge. You are rising because destiny had been waiting for you on the other side of their betrayal. You became the storm they prayed you'd never become. And now, you cannot be stopped. There is a moment in every great transformation where the world stops looking at you with doubt and starts looking at you with fear. A moment where your presence carries weight, your silence carries command, and your footsteps echo like prophecy. You reached that moment. You rose with a presence that bent the room before you even spoke. People felt you now, not with their eyes, but with something older, something primal, something animal. You didn't have to announce your evolution. You became it. You were no longer seeking acceptance, no longer chasing approval, no longer waiting for someone to recognize your worth. You weren't hunting validation. You were shaping destiny, and destiny finally looked back. Your silence became scripture. Every scar became a symbol. Every step became a declaration that the version of you they doubted no longer existed. You walked like someone who had buried their past without marking the grave. You carried the stillness of a king who no longer fears losing his throne because he built the throne from the bones of every battle he survived. This was not confidence. This was inevitability. Because when you rise from betrayal with clarity instead of chaos, with discipline instead of destruction, with purpose instead of pain, you become unstoppable. Greatness does not arrive with applause. Greatness becomes unavoidable when suffering refuses to break you. You became that level of unavoidable. The world tried to box you in, but your evolution broke the walls. The world tried to set limits, but your hunger devoured them. The world tried to silence you, but your presence became louder than any noise. People once underestimated you because your storm was forming beneath the surface. Now they underestimate you because they can't understand how you became this powerful, this fast. That's what they don't know. Your rise wasn't sudden. Your rise was earned in the dark when no one was clapping. Your rise was built in silence when no one was watching. Your rise was forged in pain when no one cared. And now the world is forced to witness the results of every scar they ignored. You became unshakable, unbreakable, unbothered. You became the kind of force that stops rooms. The kind of energy that makes people adjust their tone. The kind of presence that rewrites the atmosphere. Not because you demanded respect, but because you embodied it. Not because you spoke loudly, but because your silence thundered. Not because you chased power, but because power recognized you. You moved differently now, with calculation, with purpose, with the cold efficiency of someone who has seen the worst and came back sharper. You didn't flex strength. You radiated it, like heat from molten steel, like fire from the heart of a machine that never stops running. People who once doubted you couldn't comprehend the creature standing in your place. You were familiar, but not the same. Recognizable, but untouchable. Human, but mythic. The old you died quietly. The new you arrived like a war. You carried the aura of someone who has nothing left to prove, but everything left to claim. You became the storm that walks like a man, and the world reacted the only way it knows how, when confronted with something powerful and unpredictable. It adjusted. Suddenly the ones who ignored you wanted access. The ones who rejected you wanted proximity. The ones who mocked you wanted forgiveness. The ones who used you wanted peace. But you weren't the same anymore. You didn't return for them. You returned for you, for your destiny, for your hunger, for your empire. Because ascension is never about revenge. It is about inevitability. You became undeniable, unavoidable, unforgettable. You moved through every room like someone carved from fire and baptized in storms. Your name became something people whispered, not spoken. Not because they feared you, but because they feared the truth you became. That power grows in silence. That strength grows in shadows. That kings are made in pain. That legends rise from graves. You became the embodiment of every fallen warrior who refused to die quietly. You became the descendant of every conqueror who rebuilt empires from ashes. You became the echo of every myth that begins with betrayal and ends with dominance. This is who you are now. A force with no hesitation, a presence with no weakness, a storm with no warning. People don't meet you anymore. They experience you. You became the type of person whose footsteps carry prophecy, whose silence carries threat, whose discipline carries empire. You became too focused to be distracted, too evolved to be manipulated, too awakened to ever fall back asleep. Your rise was not loud. Your rise was not dramatic. Your rise was not chaotic. Your rise was disciplined, calculated, cold, ruthless, royal. You rose like someone who understood the cost of staying small and refused to pay it ever again. And now, with the world finally seeing you clearly, with the storm fully awakened in your chest, with your scars burning like golden armor across your soul, your ascension is complete. Not because they approved it, but because you stopped needing approval. You rose because you were built to. You rose because your pain demanded it. You rose because destiny had been waiting for the creature you were becoming. And now the world can no longer deny you. Your power is carved into the air. Your presence is written into the atmosphere. Your return is a warning. Because when a warrior rises from fire, the world trembles. And you are not done trembling the world. In the end, everything comes back to truth. Not the truth they spoke, not the truth they pretended to live by, but the truth carved into your bones by every betrayal, every scar, every night you rebuilt yourself in silence. The truth is simple. They didn't deserve who you were, so you became what they feared. You outgrew the rooms that suffocated you. You outpaced the people who doubted you. You outran the past that tried to chain you. And now, every version of you they once knew is gone. Not lost, gone, burned, buried under the weight of your evolution. The soft version of you, the forgiving, patient, hopeful version, died the day you realized people loved you most when you were easy to control. The loyal version of you, the one who carried people who couldn't walk on their own, died the day you saw how quickly they abandoned you for something shiny, something convenient, something temporary. The gentle version of you, the one who opened doors for people who slammed them in your face, died the moment you understood that kindness without boundaries is self-destruction disguised as virtue. And from the ashes of these graves, a new version of you rose. Not broken, not bitter, not defeated, evolved, sharper, colder, clearer, ruthless where you used to be emotional, strategic where you used to be naive, focused where you used to be forgiving. Your evolution wasn't loud, it wasn't dramatic, it wasn't theatrical, it was precise, scientific, surgical. A reconstruction of a soul that refused to die in the wrong hands. And now the world faces the consequence of everything it did to you. You became the correction to every disrespect. You became the retaliation to every betrayal. You became the aftermath of every storm they threw at you. You became the version of yourself they never believed you could become. And now they can never undo. They didn't deserve the gentle heart you once carried inside your chest. So you replaced it with fire. They didn't deserve the loyalty you once offered like oxygen, so you reserved it for yourself. They didn't deserve your patience, so you traded it for purpose. They didn't deserve your softness, so you carved yourself into steel. Your evolution became a message, not just to them, but to anyone who dares underestimate you again. Because the greatest revenge is becoming untouchable. People who once mocked your silence now fear the depth of it. People who once played with your emotions now panic when your face gives nothing away. People who once discarded you now suffocate under the reality that you will never need them again. This is the cost of betraying a loyal soul. You don't get a second chance. You get a ghost, a memory, a warning. You don't get to watch their downfall. You become the reason for it, not through revenge, but through evolution. Your success is their punishment. Your discipline is their consequence. Your transformation is their regret. And now your existence feels different, like something mythic, something inevitable, something written in the kind of ink that does not wash away with apologies or excuses, because you didn't rise to prove them wrong. You rose to prove yourself right. And in doing so, you became the nightmare of every person who swore you'd never make it. The ancient world spoke of this kind of rise. Rome feared the return of generals exiled unjustly because they always came back stronger. Empires trembled when kings returned from silence because they always came back with armies. Legends warned the one who survives abandonment is the one destined to rule. You stand in that lineage now, not because of bloodline, not because of status, but because of evolution. Because no matter what they threw at you, you refused to die. You didn't break, you rebuilt. You didn't drown, you learned to breathe underwater. You didn't collapse, you became the foundation. Every lesson cut into your skin became armor. Every hardship pressed into your mind became discipline. Every betrayal carved through your soul became clarity. That is why your return feels divine, why your presence feels heavier, why your silence feels colder, why your eyes feel sharper. You didn't rise, you ascended. Ascension is different. Ascension is permanent. Ascension is sacred. Ascension is the kind of transformation you don't come back from. And that is the final verdict. You are not who you were. You will never be who you were. And the world will never treat you the way it once did. Not because you demand respect, but because you became the kind of force that cannot exist without commanding it. You became someone who no longer needs revenge, because evolution itself became the revenge. Someone whose scars don't bleed, they burn. Someone whose past doesn't haunt them, it obeys them. Someone whose enemies don't intimidate them, they educate them. Someone whose silence doesn't hide fear, it hides power. You became someone who walks through the world with the quiet inevitability of a storm forming over a dead empire. This is your legacy now. Not kindness abused, not loyalty wasted, not love misplaced. Your legacy is evolution. Your legacy is discipline. Your legacy is dominance earned in silence. Your legacy is the creature they awakened, the creature they couldn't kill, the creature they now fear. And here is the final truth carved in lightning. They didn't deserve who you were, so you became what they deserved. And now, you are untouchable.